The contractions were 4 minutes apart when she called him. He didn't answer. She called again, 3 times. The fourth time he picked up, and she could hear noise in the background, music, voices, the specific sound of somewhere that was not where he was supposed to be. "Daniel," she said, "it's time." A pause. The background noise shifted, a door closing, quieter. "I'm in the middle of something," he said. She was 38 weeks pregnant. She was sitting on the bathroom floor of their house because that was where she had been when the contraction hit, and the floor had felt like the safest place. Her hand was pressed flat against the tile. "Daniel," she said, "the baby is coming." Another pause. "Call your mother," he said. "She'll take you." He hung up. She sat on the bathroom floor for a moment. The tile was cold. Another contraction was building, low and wide, the kind that started in her back and wrapped around. She breathed through it the way the class had taught her. In, out, slow. His mother lived 40 minutes away. She called an ambulance instead. Her name was Sarah Holloway. She was 31 years old. She had been married to Daniel Holloway for 4 years, and she had spent most of those 4 years making adjustments to her expectations, to her plans, to the version of her marriage she had believed she was building. She was good at adjustments. She had learned to be. What she had not adjusted to, what she had not yet found a way to file away and move past, was this. She was having his baby. She had wanted this baby. She had wanted it with a specificity that surprised her sometimes. The way she could picture it already, the small face, the weight of it, the particular way a new person smelled. She had wanted this baby, and he had been present for the wanting and absent for everything since. The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. She walked to it herself. Subscribe right now, because the doctor who walks into that delivery room in 2 hours is going to change everything. Not because of what he does, because of who he is, and because of what Daniel Holloway does next, which Sarah does not yet know, and which will not stay secret past midnight. St. Meridian Hospital, labor and delivery, 4th floor. The admitting nurse was named Paula. She had been on this floor for 16 years, and she could read a woman arriving alone the way she could read a chart, quickly, accurately, without needing to be told. "Someone meeting you here?" she said. "I called my husband," Sarah said. Another contraction. She gripped the edge of the intake desk. "He said he was coming." Paula wrote something down. Her expression did not change. She had heard this sentence before, in this tone, from women who already knew what it meant. "We'll get you settled," she said. "Is there anyone else we should call?" Sarah thought about this. There was her friend Maggie, who was in Denver for work. There was her colleague from the firm, who had a new baby herself and was on 4 hours of sleep. There was her mother, who was gone, 3 years now. There was her father, who had remarried and lived in Florida and whom she spoke to on birthdays. There was one other person, but she hadn't spoken to him in 6 years, and the last time she had, it hadn't ended well. It hadn't ended well because Daniel had made sure of that. "No," she said, "just my husband." Paula nodded. She handed Sarah a bracelet. "Room 7, she said. "Let's get you comfortable." Room 7 had a window that faced the parking structure. Sarah watched the entrance from it between contractions, which were 3 minutes apart now, and no longer something she could watch through without gripping something. Daniel did not come through the entrance. At 9:45, she called him again. This time it went to voicemail immediately. She put the phone down on the bed beside her. She looked at the ceiling, which was the kind of hospital ceiling designed to be inoffensive, and succeeded only in being blank. She thought about the last 4 years. She thought about the adjustments. She thought about the specific sequence of events that had led her to this room, in this hospital, alone, 38 weeks pregnant, and watching a parking structure entrance for a man who had sent her call to voicemail. She thought, I knew. Not when she married him, not in the beginning, but she had known for 2 years, in the way you know things you are not yet willing to say out loud. She had known, and she had adjusted, and she had told herself that people were complicated, and marriages required work, and the version of Daniel she had fallen in love with was still in there somewhere. Another contraction hit. She grabbed the bed rail. She breathed. When it passed, she picked up her phone. She looked at the screen. She scrolled to a number she had not called in 6 years, which she had kept in her phone without entirely understanding why. She didn't call it. She put the phone down. A nurse came in to check her. 7 centimeters, moving fast. The on-call resident would be there shortly. Did she want anything for the pain? She said yes. She said, please. The on-call resident was 29 years old and competent and kind and not who Sarah needed. He checked her, gave her a quiet assessment, said things were progressing well. He had the specific calm of someone trained to be calm in rooms like this one, which was useful, and also a little like being attended to by a capable stranger, which was what he was. He left to check on another patient. Sarah was alone again. 10:47. The contractions were 2 minutes apart. She had stopped watching the parking structure entrance. The door opened. She turned, expecting the resident, expecting Paula. The man in the doorway was wearing scrubs, dark blue. He had a stethoscope around his neck and a chart in his hand, and he was looking down at it as he entered, reading, the way doctors entered rooms when they had 12 other rooms and needed to orient themselves quickly. He looked up. He stopped. Sarah stopped. They looked at each other across the room. Her in the hospital bed, with the monitor leads and the IV, and the specific stillness of a woman between contractions who has just seen something she did not expect. Him in the doorway with the chart going slack in his hand. His name was James Calloway. He had been her brother for 27 years before Daniel Holloway had spent 8 months systematically convincing Sarah that James was jealous of her marriage, that his concern was control, that his calls were interference, and his visits were judgment, and the kindest thing she could do for her own happiness was to create some distance. She had created the distance. She had not fully understood, until considerably later, what had been done to her. "Sarah," he said. His voice was the same. That was the thing she noticed first. 6 years, and it was the same voice. The one she had grown up with. The one that had taught her to ride a bike by running alongside her and letting go without telling her, because he said she would panic if she knew, and she hadn't. She had just ridden. "James," she said. A contraction hit. He crossed the room in 4 steps. He took her hand. She gripped it. He did not say anything. He was a doctor. He knew what this required and what it didn't. When it passed, she was crying. She hadn't realized she was crying until she felt it. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't," he said. "Not now. I should have—" "Sarah." His voice was firm, gentle underneath the firm. "You are 7 centimeters dilated, and I am your doctor tonight. Everything else is later." She looked at him. "You're the attending?" she said. "I'm the attending." He looked at her chart. His face was professionally neutral. "Where is your husband?" She looked at the window, the parking structure, the entrance no one had come through. "I don't know," she said. He wrote something in the chart. She couldn't see what. "Okay," he said. "Then I'm here. Is that okay?" She looked at her brother. 6 years. She had adjusted to his absence the way she had adjusted to other losses, by filling the space with other things, by not looking directly at it. She had told herself it was fine. She had told herself she didn't need— "Yes," she said. "That's okay." Paula had seen this before. Not this specific situation, but the shape of it. The woman arriving alone at intake, the careful way she said, "My husband is coming." The specific way she looked at the entrance every time someone walked past. Paula had been on this floor for 16 years. She could read it. At 11 p.m., she brought Sarah extra blankets without being asked. "Cold in here," she said, not a question. "A little," Sarah said. Paula tucked the blanket around her feet. She did this with the efficiency of someone who had done it 10,000 times and still did it carefully. "Your doctor is good," she said. "Dr. Calloway, he's one of the best on this floor." Sarah looked at her. "I know," she said. Paula nodded. She checked the monitor reading, made a note, headed for the door. At the door, she paused. "Some nights," she said, not quite looking at Sarah, "the person who shows up is better than the person who was supposed to." She paused. "That's not always a bad thing." She left before Sarah could respond. Sarah looked at the ceiling. She thought, "Yes, that's true." The delivery took 2 hours and 14 minutes. James stayed. Not at the bedside the entire time. He had other patients, other rooms, the practical demands of a night shift, but he came back. Every 20 minutes, sometimes less. He checked in. He spoke to her in the specific register of a doctor, and also in the register of someone who knew her, who had known her since before she could remember anyone. At 12:47 in the morning, a girl was born. She was 6 pounds, 11 ounces. She arrived without complications. She cried immediately, which was the sound Sarah had been imagining for 9 months. And it was nothing like she had imagined, and exactly right. James stepped back, let the nurses do their work, stood at the edge of the room with his chart and his stethoscope and his hands, which Sarah noticed had stopped being still. He was gripping the chart. She didn't say anything about this. The nurse placed the baby on Sarah's chest. She looked at her daughter. She thought, okay then. It was the kind of thought that required no explanation. The thing about Kristen was that she was not complicated. Daniel had understood this about her from the beginning and had found it initially restful. Sarah was complicated. Sarah had a brother who looked at Daniel the way James Calloway looked at him, steadily, without performance, with the specific quality of attention that made Daniel feel seen in a way he did not enjoy. Sarah had opinions that were her own, and a history and a way of noticing things. Being with Sarah required being a version of himself that held together under scrutiny. Kristen did not scrutinize. She accepted the version he presented because she had no framework to question it, and he had been careful to keep it that way. He had met her at a conference in Chicago 14 months ago, not 2 years. He had said 2 years to Sarah because it was better, strategically, to confess to the larger number up front. Get the worst out, let her calibrate to it, seem forthcoming. He had been managing again. In Miami, the night Sarah's baby came, he had been at a restaurant on the water with Kristen and 2 of her friends he had met for the first time and did not particularly like. He had been performing the role of the man Kristen believed him to be. Available, interested, building towards something. He had received the calls. He had silenced them one by one. He had not let himself think about what he was silencing them away from. This was something he had learned to do, the specific and practiced art of not thinking about things he did not want to think about. He had built it over 20 years into something nearly automatic. The thought would approach, he would redirect. He would be back in the room, in the conversation, in the version of himself that was easier to be. At 9:47 p.m., he had gone to the bathroom and looked at his phone and seen 5 missed calls from Sarah, 2 from the hospital. He had stood at the sink. He had looked at himself in the mirror. He had washed his hands and gone back to the table and ordered another drink. He had told himself, she'll be fine. Women have babies. The hospital is there. Her mother, he had remembered then that her mother was gone. He had pushed that away too. He had told himself, she'll be fine. He had not let himself finish the sentence. And you can handle the fallout tomorrow. But that had been the sentence. She had met Daniel at a dinner party. That was the beginning of the story she had told herself for 4 years, and it was true as far as it went. A dinner party, a mutual friend, a man who had been funny and attentive and who remembered, the next time he saw her, exactly what she had said about her work and her brother and the book she was reading. She had thought, here is someone who pays attention. She had been right. The paying attention had been the thing. He paid attention to everything, her preferences, her moods, her opinions, and then, gradually and without announcement, began suggesting adjustments. Not demanding, suggesting. He was very good at the difference. The adjustment about James had taken 8 months. It had started with small things. James's voicemail played back with a slight comment. He seems protective. A story Sarah told about her brother reframed gently. That sounds like he was checking up on you. A private phone call followed by Daniel's quiet concern. He said some things about me. I don't want to upset you. By month 4, she had started hearing James differently. By month 8, she had started keeping a distance. She had not understood for a long time that the distance had been manufactured. She had believed she arrived at it herself. That was Daniel's specific skill. He did not push you to conclusions. He arranged the information until you concluded yourself. James had been right. James had been careful not to push. And between their respective correctness and caution, 6 years had passed. She was not going to spend the years ahead cataloging fault. She was going to raise her daughter. Call her brother on Sunday. That was enough to begin. Daniel Holloway landed at JFK at 6:15 in the morning. He had been in Miami for 18 hours. The flight had been booked under his assistant's name, which had been, he had believed, untraceable in any practical sense. The woman he had been with was named Kristen. She was 26. She believed, or had chosen to believe, that his marriage was ending and that she was the reason it was ending, and that this reflected well on her. He turned on his phone in the terminal. 14 missed calls. 3 from Sarah, 11 from numbers he didn't recognize. He called Sarah. She didn't answer. He called again. Voicemail. He stood in the terminal with his carry-on and his phone, and the specific sensation of a man who has done something he cannot undo and is now running the calculations of how bad the undoing will be. He called his lawyer. His lawyer didn't answer. It was 6:20 in the morning. He took a cab to the hospital. He came through the entrance at 7:40. James was at the nurse's station on the 4th floor. He had been on shift for 14 hours. He should have gone home 2 hours ago. He had not gone home. He watched Daniel Holloway come off the elevator. He knew who he was. He had made it his business to know, 6 years ago. Not out of anger, though anger had been present, but out of the methodical habit of a person who needed to understand things completely before he could stop thinking about them. He had pulled the public records, business filings, litigation history, the scattered digital evidence of a person moving through the world. Nothing criminal. Daniel Holloway was too careful for criminal. What James had found instead was a pattern, the residue of managed relationships. A former business partner who had left a company under circumstances that everyone described differently. A college friend who had, according to 3 mutual acquaintances, simply stopped being in Daniel's life after saying something Daniel didn't like. Small things. Individually, nothing. Together, a shape. He had shown the shape to a therapist he trusted. She had said, "This is someone who experiences relationships as things to control. When control becomes difficult, the relationship becomes disposable." James had said, "He married my sister." She had said, "Yes, that's the concern." He had tried to reach Sarah 4 times after that conversation. She had not called back. The 4th time, Daniel had answered her phone and said, pleasantly, that Sarah was resting and he would pass along the message. James had not called again. He had made himself not call again. He had told himself, she's an adult. She made a choice. Showing up uninvited is exactly what Daniel told her you would do, and if you do it, you confirm his version of you. He had been right about the logic and wrong about the conclusion. He knew that now. He had known it for years. He looked at Daniel Holloway coming off the elevator. He knew who he was. He had made it his business to know 6 years ago when Sarah had stopped calling. He had looked into Daniel Holloway the way you looked into the person you believed had taken something from you, methodically and without pleasure. He had found enough. Not proof of anything criminal, just the clear, consistent pattern of a man who managed people by isolating them from anyone who might offer a competing perspective. Daniel came to the nurse's station. "Sarah Holloway," he said. "Room 7. She's my wife." Paula looked at him. Paula had been on this floor for 16 years. She said, "One moment." She looked at James. James came around the desk. Daniel looked at him. Doctor, scrubs, stethoscope. No immediate recognition. "I'm Dr. Calloway," James said. "I was your wife's attending last night. Is she okay?" The question came quickly. It had, James noted, the specific quality of a question asked to perform concern rather than from it. The timing was wrong. A man who had been unreachable all night and had just landed on a 6 a.m. flight did not ask about his wife before he asked about his daughter. "She's fine," James said. "The baby is fine." Daniel exhaled. "Good. Which room?" "Before you go in," James said. Daniel paused. James looked at him steadily. He had been thinking about this moment for 2 hours. He had decided he would be precise. He would not be emotional. He was a doctor. He knew how to deliver information clearly. "Your wife delivered alone last night," James said. "She called you at 8:42 p.m. You told her to call your mother. You did not come." He paused. "I've been her attending since 9 p.m. I will also tell you that I am her brother, which you know, and that I have been aware of what you've done to her relationship with me and why, and that I am telling you this here, now, before you go into that room, because I want you to understand something." Daniel's face had shifted. The performance of concern was gone. Something harder underneath. "You don't have any standing to—" "I'm not speaking as her brother right now," James said. "I'm speaking as her doctor." He kept his voice level. "She is my patient. Her well-being is my clinical responsibility until she is discharged. If you go into that room and you cause her distress—" He stopped. Let the sentence sit incomplete. Then, "Do you understand me?" Daniel looked at him. He was calculating. James could see it. The specific interior arithmetic of a man who managed situations, who had spent years managing situations, running the variables. Doctor, hospital, witnesses, legal exposure. "I understand," Daniel said. "Good," James said. "Room 7. He stepped back. Daniel walked down the corridor. James watched him go. Then he turned back to the nurse's station. Paula was looking at him. "Well said," she said quietly. "Thank you," he said. He sat down. He picked up a chart. His hands were not entirely steady. "Go home," Paula said. "I'll watch the room." "In an hour," he said. Daniel sat by Sarah's bed for 40 minutes. She had been awake when he came in. The baby was in the bassinet beside the bed, asleep, the small, bundled sleep of someone who had just arrived and had not yet learned that sleep was temporary. He sat in the chair. He said he was sorry. He said it had been a work thing, a client, a situation that had become unavoidable. He said he should have been there. He said it again. He said the words that were correct. He had always known the correct words. Knowing the correct words was one of the things he was genuinely good at. Sarah listened. She looked at her daughter. She had been thinking, in the hours since the birth, about adjustments, about the 4 years of them, about the thing she had realized at some point and had not said out loud, which was that adjustments had a limit, and she had reached it. And the limit had been the bathroom floor, and the cold tile, and the ambulance, and the contraction she had breathed through alone. She had been thinking about her brother standing in the doorway. "Daniel," she said. He stopped talking. "I'm going to need you to leave," she said. He looked at her. "Sarah, Not permanently, she said. Right now. I need you to leave the room right now. I just got here. I know. Her voice was even. She had found a stillness in the night that had not been there before, like something had settled, finally, into the correct position. I know you just got here, and I'm glad the baby is healthy, and I'm glad you know she exists. But right now I need you to leave because I need to talk to my brother, and I haven't spoken to my brother in 6 years. Daniel went still. Your brother, he said. He was my attending last night, she said. He delivered our daughter. She looked at Daniel steadily. He held my hand through the contractions. A pause. You sent my call to voicemail. He said nothing. I want you to leave now, she said. We'll talk. There's a lot to talk about, but right now, today, I need you to leave. He looked at the baby. Something moved through his face. She had learned to read his face over 4 years, and she read this correctly. He was calculating the optics of leaving versus the optics of staying, and he had decided that staying would cost more. He stood. He went to the bassinet. He looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he walked out. James was in the corridor. Daniel stopped. They looked at each other. She wants you, Daniel said. He said it like it cost him. James nodded. Daniel, he said. Daniel waited. I spent 6 years watching my sister from a distance because you convinced her I was a threat to her happiness. James kept his voice low, even. The corridor was quiet, but not empty. I watched her get married. I watched her build a life. I watched her stop calling. He paused. I'm not going to tell you what I think of you. Not here, not today. He looked at him directly. But I want you to understand that I know exactly what you did and how you did it, and I have documentation that your lawyer is going to find very thorough. Daniel's jaw was tight. That sounds like a threat. It's information, James said. What you do with it is up to you. He walked past him to room 7. He knocked. Come in, Sarah said. He opened the door. She was holding the baby. The morning light was coming through the window at a low angle, the specific quality of early light that made everything look provisional and new. His sister. A child he had not known existed until 8 hours ago. He sat in the chair Daniel had just left. Neither of them spoke for a moment. I'm sorry, Sarah said. I told you, he said. Not now. Now, she said. I need to say it now. She looked at the baby. I knew something was wrong. I knew it when it was happening. He would tell me something you'd said or done, and I would think, that doesn't sound like James. And then I would think, but why would Daniel lie about this? She paused. I chose the easier thing. I chose the explanation that didn't require me to admit I'd married someone who... She stopped. James looked at his hands. I did the same thing, he said. I chose to respect your choice instead of pushing harder. He paused. I told myself it was your life, that you were an adult, that showing up uninvited was exactly what he'd told you I would do. He looked up. And I let him be right about that. I stayed away. You were right to. I wasn't right. He said it plainly. I should have found a way. I should have written a letter, something. I chose my own discomfort over your safety, and I'm not going to pretend that was the noble option. Sarah looked at him. 6 years. And this was still the same person who had let go of the back of her bike without telling her. What's her name? He said. She looked at the baby. I don't know yet, she said. I was waiting. She paused. We couldn't agree. Daniel wanted his mother's name. I didn't love it. She shifted the baby slightly. What was Grandma Calloway's middle name? James went still. Ruth, he said. Sarah looked at her daughter. "Hello, Ruth," she said. James was quiet for a long time. "You don't have to," he started. "I know," she said. Daniel Holloway drove home. He sat in his car outside the house for 20 minutes without going in. He was thinking about the documentation James had mentioned. He was thinking about Miami and the phone records and the flight under his assistant's name. He was thinking about the 8 months he had spent, 6 years ago, carefully shaping Sarah's perception of her brother. The conversations, the anecdotes, the subtle, consistent reframing of everything James said and did until Sarah had drawn her own conclusions. He had been, he recognized, very good at it. He was thinking about a bathroom floor. He was thinking about the sound of a contraction. He had not been in the room. He had not heard it. But he knew what it sounded like because he had been there for the early ones, the false alarms in the 7th month, and he had heard what that pain cost her, and he had been there then. He had not been there last night. He had been in Miami. He sat in his car. He was a man who managed situations. It was the skill he had relied on his entire adult life. The ability to identify a problem, calculate the variables, find the path through. He had managed his marriage. He had managed his image. He had managed Sarah. He looked at the house. He thought, "I cannot manage this." It was a new thought. He sat with its unfamiliarity. His phone rang. His lawyer finally calling back. Daniel answered. He gave a compressed version of the situation. Baby born, wife in hospital. Her brother had been the attending. Brother had mentioned documentation. He kept his voice flat, professional, the voice he used for problems. His lawyer was quiet for a moment. "What documentation?" he said. He didn't specify. "James Calloway." A pause. "I know who he is. He has a reputation for being very organized." Another pause. "Daniel, what does he have to be organized about?" Daniel looked at the entrance. "The past 6 years," he said. His lawyer said, "I'll need specifics." "I know," Daniel said. "I'll call you tomorrow." He hung up. His phone rang again. Kristen. He looked at the name. He did not answer. He put the phone face down on the passenger seat. He sat there for a while longer. Then he went inside. Sarah was in the hospital for 2 more days. James came by both mornings, not as her doctor, she had been transferred to the general ward, but as her brother. He came with coffee from the place she had liked before, because he still remembered what she liked before, and he sat in the chair and they talked. Not about Daniel, not yet. There was time for that, and the time was not this. They talked about the 6 years, about his residency and then his attending position, about the woman he had been with for 3 years and then not been with, about the apartment he had found, small but with a good kitchen, and the way cooking had become a thing he did seriously when everything else felt provisional. She told him about the pregnancy, about the months of it, about the specific loneliness of being pregnant in a marriage that was not what she had believed it was, the way you could be surrounded by all the external markers of a life and still feel the distance between yourself and anything real. "I made choices," she said. "Yes," he said. "I'm not," she paused. "I don't want to be someone who doesn't take responsibility for the choices she made." "You can take responsibility and still acknowledge what was done to you," he said. "Those aren't mutually exclusive." She looked at Ruth, who was in the bassinet asleep. "What do I do?" she said. Not desperate, just asking. The way she had asked him things growing up, when she trusted the answer. "I don't know," he said. "I can tell you what I think, but it's your life, Sarah. It's your daughter. It's your decision. Tell me what you think." He thought about it honestly. He didn't rush the answer. "I think Daniel is someone who is very good at a specific thing," he said. "He's good at managing how he's perceived. By you, by other people. He's been doing it so long I'm not sure he knows anymore where the management ends and the actual person starts." He paused. That doesn't mean he can't change. People do change. But change requires him to stop managing and start being accountable. And I don't know if he can do that. He's Ruth's father, she said. Yes, James said. And Ruth deserves a father who shows up. What that looks like, he spread his hands. That's the conversation you need to have with him. And with a lawyer. And probably someone else. A therapist, she said. Yes. He won't go. You might need to go without him, James said. Or you need to decide whether someone who won't go is someone you're building a life with. She looked at the bassinet. She has his eyes, she said. James looked too. She has your mouth, he said. Exactly your mouth. Sarah almost smiled, the first real one since he'd walked in the door. On the second morning, while James was there, Daniel came. He had texted first. She had said yes. He came in and saw James and stopped. Something passed through his face, the old reflex, the management instinct, and then, visibly, he held it back. James, he said. Daniel, James said. A silence. I'm going to get more coffee, James said. He stood. He touched Sarah's shoulder once, briefly, and left. Daniel sat. He looked at Ruth. He looked at Sarah. I need to tell you where I was, he said. I know where you were, she said. He went still. The flight records aren't hard to find, she said. I had 6 hours of being awake after the birth. I had my phone. She looked at him. Miami. A hotel I recognize because we stayed there when we were good. He said nothing. Kristen, she said. Still nothing. How long, she said. Sarah. How long, Daniel? He looked at the window, the parking structure, the entrance he had come through too late. 2 years, he said. She nodded slowly. 2 years. She had known something for 2 years. She had adjusted. I'm going to see a lawyer, she said, this week. I'm not deciding anything today, but I'm seeing a lawyer. He nodded. He had, she noted, stopped arguing. She did not know yet whether this was remorse or calculation. She suspected it was some of both, and that she would be learning the proportions for some time. What I did to James, he said. He stopped. Yes, she said, waiting. I was afraid of him, he said. I wasn't afraid he would hurt you. I was afraid you would listen to him. He knew me better than you did then. He would have told you things that were true. He looked at his hands. So I made sure you wouldn't listen. She had known this. She had known it the way she knew things she hadn't been willing to say out loud. Hearing it said was different. You took 6 years from me, she said. From us. From Ruth. She held her daughter. She would have had an uncle her whole life. I would have had my brother. Daniel said nothing. There was nothing to say that was adequate. He seemed to understand this. You need to tell him that yourself, Sarah said. Not today, not this week, but you need to tell him. He won't. That's his choice, she said. You still need to say it. She looked at him. That's not for him. That's for you. He sat with this. Ruth made a small sound. The involuntary sounds of someone very new, the noises of existing before language. Both of them looked at her. I don't know how to do this differently, he said quietly. I don't know how to be... I've been this way for a long time. I know, Sarah said. Is that enough? Just saying, I don't know? No, she said. But it might be a beginning. She looked at him. If you want a beginning. He looked at Ruth. Yes, he said. I want that. Then you need to do the work, she said. Not tell me about doing the work. Actually do it. She paused. I'm not promising anything. I'm not deciding anything today. But if you do the work... She stopped. finished the sentence differently than she had started it. "I'll watch." On the second night, after Daniel left and James had gone home finally, at Paula's insistence, Sarah sat alone with Ruth for the first time. Just the two of them. The night shift running quiet outside the room, the monitor's soft beeping. She looked at her daughter. She thought about the 4 years. She thought about what it cost to stay in a thing that was wrong when you had convinced yourself it wasn't wrong. When you had built the conviction that this was just marriage, just the real version of it that people didn't talk about, just the adjustment from the idea to the fact. She had been so careful. She had been careful not to say the true thing even to herself, because saying the true thing required deciding what to do with it. Now the true thing was out. Daniel had said it himself. 2 years, Miami, Kristen. The calls silenced one by one while Sarah breathed through contractions on a hospital bed alone. She looked at Ruth. She thought, "You will not grow up watching me adjust." It was a decision. She could feel it settle into the same place as the decision on the bathroom floor. The decision to call an ambulance instead of waiting, instead of calling his mother, instead of minimizing and managing and finding the path through that cost her least in the short term. She had called the ambulance. She was going to call the lawyer. She was going to stop adjusting. Ruth shifted in the bassinet. One small fist opened and closed. "I know," Sarah said quietly, to no one in particular. "I'm figuring it out." Ruth seemed satisfied with this. She slept. Sarah watched her breathe until she felt herself getting tired enough to sleep too, which took a while because there was a lot to think about, and some of it was grief. Genuine grief for the marriage she had believed she was in, for the years of believing it. And she had decided to let herself feel it instead of adjusting past it. She cried a little, not dramatically, just the specific crying of someone releasing something they'd been carrying. Then she slept. She went home on a Thursday. James drove her. Not because Daniel hadn't offered, he had, but because she had asked James, and James had said yes, and there was something clarifying about that. Being driven home by the person she wanted to be driven home by. Making that choice. Not adjusting. Ruth slept in the car seat for the whole drive. The city went past the windows in its ordinary way. Traffic, buildings, the specific late afternoon light of early spring that made everything look like it was about to become something else. "What happens now?" Sarah said. "Whatever you decide," James said. "That's not an answer." "It's the only accurate one." He glanced at her. "But here's what I know. You have a daughter who has your mouth. You have a lawyer you're going to call on Monday. You have a brother who is available, specifically and permanently, and who is very annoyed that it took this long to say so." She looked at him. "Annoyed," she said. "At myself," he said, "not at you." She looked at the city going past. "James," she said. "Yes?" "When you walked into that room," she said, "when you saw me, what did you feel?" He was quiet for a moment. He drove. The city moved. "Like I've been holding something for 6 years," he said, "and I could finally put it down." She looked at her daughter asleep in the car seat. "Me too," she said. The car moved through the afternoon. Behind them, the hospital receded. Ahead, the street that led to her house, which was still the house she shared with Daniel and which would be, for some time, a place of provisional arrangement and difficult conversations and the slow, unclear work of figuring out what came next. But also her daughter, Ruth, who had her mouth in the car seat, and her brother, who had found her, finally, in a doorway she had not expected, and herself, which was, she understood now, the thing she had been most careful to keep intact through 4 years of adjustments, the part that had sat on the cold bathroom floor and called an ambulance and said to a man who told her to call her mother, "No, I'll handle this." She had handled it. She was still here. She would keep handling it. Outside, the city was doing what it always did, moving forward, indifferent, enormous, full of people making small decisions that turned out to be large ones. She had made one tonight. She had told Daniel to leave and asked her brother to stay. It was the right decision. She had known it the moment she made it. She was going to keep making the right decisions, not because it was easy, because she had a daughter named Ruth who had her mouth and needed to see what the right decision looked like, made by someone who loved her. That was enough. That was more than enough. 3 weeks later, Daniel knocked on James's door. He had gotten the address from Sarah. She had given it without comment, which meant she already knew why he needed it. James opened the door. He was in a t-shirt, dishes in the drying rack behind him. The specific evidence of a person living alone in a way that had become comfortable. "Daniel," he said. "James." He had rehearsed this. He had written it out twice and thrown the versions away because they sounded like management. "I need to say something to you." James waited. "What I did," Daniel said, "specifically, the conversations I had with Sarah about you, the things I told her, the way I framed what you said and did." He stopped. "I did it on purpose. I knew what I was doing. I was afraid of you because you saw me clearly and I didn't want Sarah to see me clearly. So I made sure she wouldn't trust what you saw." He looked at the doorframe. "I took 6 years from you, from her, from whatever relationship you would have had with Ruth." He paused. "There's no apology that's adequate for that. I know that. I'm not here because saying sorry fixes anything." "Why are you here?" James said. "Because Sarah told me I needed to say it," he said. "And because she was right. And because I'm trying to become someone who does the required thing even when it doesn't fix anything." He looked at James. "This is the required thing." James looked at him for a long moment. The evening was quiet. Neighbors' TV, traffic, a city going about its Thursday. "I appreciate you coming," James said. Daniel nodded. No warmth, and he had not expected warmth, and the absence was appropriate. "Ruth," James said, "is she okay?" Something shifted in Daniel's voice, left the management register entirely. "She's good," he said. "She makes this sound, like she's reviewing things. She looks at the ceiling fan and makes this sound like she has opinions about it." James almost smiled. "She'll have opinions," he said. "Sarah always had opinions." "I know," Daniel said. "Go home, Daniel," James said, not unkind. He went. James closed the door, stood in his kitchen, thought about what he had just heard. Not enough. Not close to enough. Also, he thought, real. Whatever Daniel was or had been, what he'd said in that doorway had not been managed. James would know the difference. He called Sarah. She answered on the second ring. "He came," she said. "He came," James said. "And?" "I'll tell you what I think when I see you Sunday," he said. "How's Ruth?" "She made a new sound today," Sarah said. "Like she's reviewing things." "I heard," James said. He heard Sarah smile through the phone, the same smile he had known for 31 years. "Sunday," she said. "Sunday," he said. He stood in his kitchen after hanging up. Outside, the city moved in its ordinary way. Forward, indifferent, enormous, full of people making small decisions that turned out to be large ones. James Calloway had walked into a room expecting a patient and found his sister. He had stayed. He was going to keep staying. That was the whole story and also the beginning of the next one. If this story reached something in you, subscribe. Because Sarah sat on a bathroom floor and called an ambulance instead of waiting. Because James stood in a doorway and stayed for a whole night. And because Ruth arrived into a room where someone was finally paying attention. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone find you when you needed them most? Even when you thought it was too late?